To your first class with me on principles and practices of management. In short, we'll be calling it as PPM paper. Okay, so this is a general paper, and it is a yeah, it is quite similar to a paper you might have had in school, which is termed as business studies, maybe. Okay, wherein in case of principles and practices of management, we'll be dealing mostly with the various aspects such as the different functions of management that you're having: planning, organizing, staffing, directing, controlling. Okay, and prior to that, of course, we'll be talking about management as such. In unit 1, you'll be dealing mostly with the concept of management, how management grew, what are different phases that management had to go through in order to have what we have today in this day and age. Okay, so I will be handling only units 4 and unit 5, and under unit 4 we'll be dealing with managerial control. Okay, so one of the main functions of management, if you remember: planning, organizing, staffing, directing, controlling. Okay, so number 5, managerial control, is what we'll be dealing with under this chapter. So under unit 4, the subtopics that we're having is the concept of managerial control, process of managerial control, effective control system, techniques pertaining to managerial control, which include traditional as well as modern techniques. And then under that, we'll be dealing with BERT and CPM, budgetary control, as well as management audit. Okay, so these are the subtopics available under managerial control. All right, so let's begin with the unit 4. Now, when we're talking about controlling, the objective of any organization is to use scarce resources in a best possible way. Now, I hope you are aware of this particular phrase: optimum utilization of resources. Okay, optimum utilization of resources, which means making use of your resources available in the best possible way without any wastage, without any additional cost, without paying anything extra for the resources that you're having, using what you have in the best possible way. Okay, this is the main objective of any organization in the world, in the country. So when we're talking about the different functions of management, the first function that always comes to mind is planning, and the last function that often comes to mind is controlling. So planning, in fact, is said to be a crucial aspect of the entire process. Okay, so plans are framed to achieve better results. And the role of the management of any organization is to make sure that the goals of the organization are achieved as planned and on time. You have the plans, so once you have the plans, it is the duty of the firm, it is the duty of the management of the organization to ensure that these goals or these plans are achieved as per the guidelines stipulated and within a specific period of time that you've already made the planning for. Now, out of the many functions of management, control is said to be one of the most important functions of the organization. Of course, planning, staffing, all these are very important, but controlling is said to have a special level of importance, so as to say. Okay, it's said to be one of the most important functions of the organization. Now, control is a primary goal oriented function of management in an organization. It is goal oriented, meaning it tries to achieve the set objectives. It tries to achieve the objectives, the goals, and the plans that have been set out by the management. Okay, so it is the process of comparing the actual performance with the set standards of the company to ensure that activities are performed according to the plans, and if not, then taking corrective action. So basically, controlling is nothing more than a process of comparing the actual performance with set standards. Okay, so for example, let's say you have a standard set wherein the plan is to produce, let's say, 100 units of a particular product. Okay, 100 units of a particular product is the standard, and the actual performance, say it's 90 products. Okay, standard is 100, actual is 90. So that difference of 10, why did that happen? That deviation, where it happened, that is the duty of the controlling function. Okay, the duty of the controlling function is to find out what happened that instead of 100 we're producing 90, and to take corrective actions to ensure that in the future we will always produce according to the standards. So control involves knowing what work is to be done pertaining to the quality of the work, the quantity of the work, as well as the time available, and also it requires or involves verifying whether the work has been done or whether the work is still being carried out, and whether it's being carried out according to the plans that have been set by the management. And in case if the work is not going as per the plans, then controlling will help to find out deviations as well as adopt remedial measures in order to correct these particular deviations that took place while carrying out the different work functions. So therefore, controlling is one of the very important functions of a manager. And in order to seek any good results, in order to seek planned results from the subordinates, the manager must try to exercise effective control over the activities of the subordinates. Okay, so basically what it means is that if you want to achieve, if you want a worker to achieve a target, you must be able to guide them. You must be able to control them. You must control them in a sense, not to be a dictator. Okay, not be a boss, not to be like mean and rude to them, forcing them to do the work, but rather to guide them, to help them to achieve the targets that have been set. So in other words, the meaning of the controlling function can be said to be as ensuring that activities in the organization are performed as per the plan. Okay, that is the main purpose of having controlling, to ensure that plans are going out without any problems. Okay, to ensure that activities are going on as per the plans. So controlling also ensures that the organization's resources are being used effectively and efficiently for the achievement of the predetermined goals. And we can say that controlling is the managerial function which start with planning and end with controlling. And the other functions, in fact, as you've stated earlier, like organizing, staffing, directing, they all act as a link between planning and controlling. So we can say that planning is the beginning, controlling is the end, and of course it forms a entire cycle, okay, of the functions and all those various activities in between, right? Like organizing, staffing, and directing, they are only acting as a link between what is planned and what has been achieved. And then controlling will figure out if there are any mistakes that have gone through in between all of these different stages. So planning will be successful only if the progress is properly controlled. And while planning involves setting up of goals, objectives, okay, setting out of these standards, controlling ensures that performance will go according to your plan. Okay, so this is the concept of controlling. So let's talk about the different definitions of controlling. There are various definitions that can be provided, that you can receive from different books, from various sources as well, but I'll just be providing you with some very few simple definitions, maybe 2 or 3 definitions. So simple ones, I'll explain them as we go as well. So the first definition is provided to us by George R. Terry. Now Professor George R. Terry says that controlling is determining what is being accomplished, that is, evaluating the performance and, if necessary, applying corrected measures so that the performance takes place according to plans. So according to Terry, he says that controlling helps in proper implementation of plans. Controlling helps to carry out the plans properly. Now, if the plans are not moving properly or if the plans are not progressing at a proper pace, that is, if something takes longer than expected or if something moves too fast than expected, then necessary measures should be taken and in order to set things right. So controlling is said to be a channel through which plans may be properly implemented. And another definition we have is by Professor Robert and Anthony. Now, according to Robert and Anthony, management control is the process by which managers assure that resources are obtained and used effectively and efficiently in the accomplishment of the organization's objectives. So, in simplest words, management control is nothing more than a process by which managers ensure that the available resources do not cost too much, okay, they're not too expensive, and then at the same time they're used properly, there's no wastage. Okay, that is what it means by effectively and efficiently in the accomplishment of the organizational goals. So control is nothing more than a tool in the hands of a management for ensuring better utilization of resources. In fact, Robert and Anthony even goes to the extent of saying that control even ensures the arrangement of required resources, ensures that resources are available even for the future, okay, by arranging them for today, for tomorrow, and for later on. And then a definition by, of course, Henry Fayol, the father of management that we have. So according to Henry Fayol, in an undertaking, control consists in verifying whether everything occurs in conformity with the plan adopted, the instructions issued, and principles established. Basically, what Henry Fayol is trying to say is that controlling is nothing more than identifying whether the work that has been done is going according to the plan that you have already accepted, okay, you've already adopted. Planning is number one, right? So whether we are following those plans, these instructions, and all these principles that are there, the principles in a sense, the objectives and the goals of the firm, okay, whether we are following according to that or not. So the plan, in fact, controlling, in fact, should point out the different weaknesses and the errors available, or the different problems that we're facing while we're carrying out the work, in order to rectify them and prevent any recurrence, okay, to stop these problems or these errors or weaknesses from happening again in the future. In fact, it should operate on everything, including things, people, actions, etc. Operate or controlling should affect people, things, and actions, not just the work or the plan, but it should also affect the things that are around the organization, the people within the organization, as well as the work that is being done by the people within the organization. Okay, so I've given you just 3 definitions. If required, you may adopt any other definitions which you find simple. Okay, there is no no rule that says you have to use exactly what I'm giving you. Okay, if you find anything simpler than this, if you find anything that is easier for you to understand than these definitions, please go ahead and use those definitions. Okay, so moving on, let's talk about the characteristics of controlling. So characteristics of controlling, you may also know them as features of controlling. Okay, features of controlling management. Now again, these characteristics for controlling, if you're getting books or if you're looking through them online, they may be different from what I'm mentioning here. Okay, I've taken these from internet, I've taken these from some of my old books as well. So basically I've mashed up here a lot of different features that I could find. So whatever you find could be correct for you, whichever is easier. Again, whichever is easier for you, please adopt that. Okay, so from my point of view here, features of controlling in a management. So the first feature we can say is that controlling is a dynamic process. Now when we're saying dynamic process, means it's something that changes all the time. Okay, controlling is something that changes all the time. It's not fixed. It has to be flexible in nature. Now controlling, as we say, is a dynamic process, and the manager is required, in fact, to take different courses of actions when an employee fails to meet these standards of performance. He cannot say that if one employee makes this kind of a mistake and another employee makes another different kind of mistake, doesn't mean that he should use the same method. Okay, he has to use different techniques, different methods in order to solve the different problems. So the manager should have the skills to decide how to react to a certain situation. Okay, for let's take an example. If you have an employee who is absent frequently, okay, he's always absent, then firstly, instead of the manager giving him a termination notice, the manager should first try to talk out the problem with the particular employee. Ask the employee what is the reason for the absenteeism, and also try to do something about this problem of absenteeism. And if the problem persists, then he should take some strict action. If even after talking through with employee, even after taking certain steps, taking different actions, if the employee is still being absent from work, then in that situation, the manager can take certain strict action. Now, similarly, the course of action would be different for the employee who has a different problem. Okay, let's say one employee, as you've said earlier, is always absent, and then another employee, maybe he's always present at work, but he's not producing, or he's not working as per the target, or he's not working as effectively as another employee. Okay, he's not performing as per standard, so he's failing to meet the performance standard. So in that situation, again, the manager must adopt different kinds of methods. Okay, again, he may firstly talk to him, and maybe he may guide him, he may be able to help him solve his problems, which are entirely different from the first person I've given. Okay, the person who is absent frequently. Okay, so different problems have to be dealt with differently. That's why it's said that controlling is a dynamic process. And the next characteristic of control is that it's a managerial function. Now, this is given. By now, we know that controlling is one of the main important functions of a management, which include planning, organizing, staffing, directing, controlling, and so on. So controlling, though it's not the main function, okay, it's not the main function, yet it is a very important function, and it has to be carried out by almost all of the managers at a different levels. Okay, it is not the only function of chief executive, but not of the people at the top, but it's also the function of the managers at the lower level as well. Okay, not just for the chief executive, not just for the CEO, not just for the top level managers, but also for the all the managers at different levels, because the manager is going to be responsible for whatever work has been assigned to him. So if he's responsible for a particular work, that means he is responsible to ensure that they meet the requirements. Therefore, he should be able to try to control the performance of his subordinates to ensure that he is able to achieve the goals that have been set out for him, right? So as you've said, let's say the main goal of the company is in order to be able to branch out to another country. Okay, let's say the main goal is to branch out to another country. Now, in order to be able to branch out to another country, there should be other minor goals. Minor goals include increasing the profits. Minor goal could be ensuring that the products are well approved or well received by the public, by the customers. Okay, so for these different sub objectives or sub goals, these also should have people who are responsible for them. Therefore, the manager who is responsible for these different works should be able to control the performance of his subordinates in order to ensure the accomplishment of these minor goals in order to achieve the main goal. So, controlling is mainly the function of line organization, but of course, managers may ask for data as well from their staff, personnel, time, and time. And the next characteristic of control is that it is forward looking. Forward looking, in a sense, is looking to the future, because the past is already gone, it cannot be controlled. Okay, as you've said earlier, it takes into consideration the standards that you've set and the work that has been done and compares those two and sees what the problem was and how we can change it in order to achieve the actual standard. Okay, so because of that, we say that it is forward looking. It is trying to ensure that in the future we are going to find out ways in which we can we can work based upon the actual standards. So it devises different measures with regards to controlling future activities of the organization. So the past basically will provide a base for determining how the control will work forward in the future. Okay, how the control will help to ensure that in the future we will achieve the goals. So the manager will study the past performances in order to find out what are the reasons for the deviations. Okay, if there is low result in low production, what are the reasons and how we can take corrective actions to ensure that in the future the work will not be adversely affected. Okay, so let's take for example production for a particular month is, let's say, lower than the standard. Let's say the production that is standard is kept at 100 units, let's say. However, when it comes to the actual performance, let's say it was just 90 units. So what happened here? Why is the production lesser than the standard? So the manager will not be able, of course, to do anything about the past. If you don't have a time traveling machine, obviously you cannot go to the past. You cannot tell them, you cannot tell the people how to work in the past. But moving ahead in the future, after studying that these are the reasons why they are having low production, they can make changes accordingly so that later on in the future we can increase the production or we can have the production as per the standard. Okay, so he will be able to take appropriate steps so that mistakes are not repeated and production will not suffer. And the next characteristic of control is that it is a continuous activity, meaning that it's something that goes on and on and on. It is not something that you'll do it once and then you don't have to do it again just because the standard and the actual have met. Okay, just because you have produced exactly as much as you're supposed to produce. So controlling is one of those functions that should be regularly exercised, because just because you've met your standards today doesn't mean that in the future you'll meet them again. Okay, there may be changes in the future. So it is not an activity which can be conducted in isolation, and the manager will have to see that his subordinates perform according to plans at all the time. Just because they do it once doesn't mean they'll do it again, right? There could always be mistakes, there could always be so many different there could be so many different environmental aspects also, there could be so many different business aspects also that could affect, in fact, that could affect the amount of production or the actual result of the work of the organization. Therefore, control should be regularly exercised. We must, as a manager, they must continuously and follow up with the subordinates. Okay, so once the control is withdrawn, once they stop the controlling function, it will actually affect work very adversely. Okay, it could lead to negative effects on the work. Therefore, control should be exercised continuously. And then the fifth characteristic of control, we can say it as control is related to planning. Now, as you've said, controlling, planning, organizing, all of these are the different functions of management. So without further explanation also, we can clearly see that controlling and planning should go together. Okay, so planning is, as you've seen, the first function of management, while controlling may be said to be the last function of management. Okay, so controlling cannot be exercised without planning. If you do not have a plan, if you do not have a plan, means you don't have any standards that you're setting. Now, if there are no standards that have been setting, after all the work has been done, what will you compare it with? What will you compare it with to know whether you have met the standards or not? So if there is no planning, there cannot be any controlling as well. So firstly, the objectives should be set, and only then can efforts be made to see whether these efforts, whether these goals, whether these plans have been accomplished or not. Okay, so whether there is a laxity in performance, or whether things are not happening as per the plans, all of these can be done only through or only after proper and effective planning has been made. So therefore, we can say that planning goes before controlling, or planning provides a base for controlling. And the sixth characteristic of control is a sense of control is action. So what this basically means is that only a control can only be done after some kind of action has been taken, whether it is a positive action or a negative action. Only after some kind of work has been done, only then can control be exercised. So whenever performance is not as per the standards, only then can immediate action be taken in order to correct things. So the purpose of controlling will be defeated, or controlling can become useless if corrective action is not taken immediately. So once you have compared these standards with the actual, okay, once that has been done, and once you figured out what the problems are, and once you've found a solution to that, action should be taken on that. Okay, so if action is not being taken, then controlling becomes useless. Okay, what it means is that if you found mistakes and you have found the ways to correct them, but you're not correcting them, then in that situation controlling becomes useless. The study of, or the comparison of the standards and actual becomes entirely useless. So for example, if we say, if the sales of a particular department are lesser than the standard, then steps should be taken to ensure the performance is not low in the future. Now, if these steps are not taken even after seeing that the performance is lesser, then it'll mean that there is no control as such. Okay, so in practice, immediate action is very important part, or very important aspect of controlling. Okay, so the seventh point, or the seventh characteristic of control we have is controlling is an end function. Now, controlling is an end function because it comes into play, or it comes into action only once after all of the tasks have been completed. Okay, after first you have planning, right? After planning, you're carrying out the work. After all the work has been done, finally when the results come into the picture, only then will controlling also come. Okay, so therefore it's said to be as an end function. So the performance standards are decided before the work is assigned to the employees, and once the work is completed, then the performance of employees will be compared with the standard performance. And after that, they'll see that if the performance is not the same as that of the standard, then actions will be required to be taken. But in case the performance isn't the same, then after that only corrective action or controlling function comes into play. Okay, and the eighth characteristic we have is controlling is a pervasive function. Pervasive means it is in every aspect or every level of management. It's something that pervades, or is something that cannot be left out from any level of management. So all management levels are required to have controlling, no matter what it is, no matter which level, low level, middle level, top level, every level will require some amount of controlling. And the last characteristic we can see is controlling process is universal. Controlling process is universal means it's applied to all different organizations, all different situations. It's not just for businesses, it's not just for, let's say, for educational sector, it's not just for your infrastructural sector. Okay, it's something that is for all the organizations and all different types of functions. So controlling process consists of certain elements which are same irrespective of the type of organization or function to be controlled. So every manager will have to exercise control process to see whether the activities are happening as per the plans that have been specified or not. So this particular function of controlling is indispensable irrespective of the size of the organization, small enterprise, medium enterprise, or even a large enterprise or your multinational corporation, or even the nature or the type of the organization as such. It is universal, that is, it is required for all different types of organizations. Okay, so these are your different characteristics of controlling. So we'll stop here for today, and in the next classes we'll talk about the different needs as well as objectives of controlling and the other prerequisites of control system as well. Okay,